Somewhere off the coast of Costa Rica, 350 feet below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, sits the single largest deposit of pirate treasure ever documented in human history. Not rumored, not theorized, documented, eyewitnessed, written down in sworn affidavits signed by men who helped bury it. We know the island. We know the coordinates. We have the maps, the diaries, the confessions. And yet, after 200 years and more than 300 organized expeditions, every single one of them has come home empty-handed. This is the story of Cocos Island, and this is the story of the Lima treasure, the greatest fortune ever stolen, ever hidden, and ever lost. A cache so enormous that its estimated modern value sits somewhere between $3 and $12 billion, depending on who you ask and which part of the hoard they're counting. Gold crucifixes encrusted with emeralds, bars of pure silver, jeweled swords, pearl necklaces, a life-size solid gold statue of the Virgin Mary, her crown set with diamonds the size of thumbnails. All of it packed into iron-banded chests and lowered into a system of tunnels and sea caves on an island so remote, so swallowed by jungle, that the Pacific Ocean itself seems to guard it. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Treasure Island as fiction in 1883. What most people have never been told is that he based it on something real. The island in his novel, The Buried Pirate Gold, the map with an X marking the spot. None of it was invented. It was borrowed, and the original story is darker, stranger, and far more disturbing than anything in the novel. To understand what is buried on Cocos Island, you need to understand what Spain was doing in South America for 300 years. From the moment Pizarro destroyed the Inca Empire in the 1530s, the Spanish colonial machine operated on a single principle: take everything. Gold, silver, emeralds, jade, the sacred objects of entire civilizations, stripped from temples and melted into bars. The Potosi silver mines in Bolivia alone produced so much metal that the phrase "worth a Potosi" became a Spanish idiom for unfathomable wealth. Hundreds of thousands of indigenous workers died in those mines. The silver kept flowing. By the early 1800s, Spain's empire in South America was crumbling. The revolutionary movements that would eventually create a dozen independent nations were already well underway. In Lima, the capital of the Spanish Viceroyalty of Peru, the colonial governors faced a nightmare scenario. The city held the accumulated wealth of 3 centuries of extraction: gold, silver, gems, ecclesiastical treasures from every church and cathedral for 1,000 miles in every direction. And the rebels were coming. In 1820, the revolutionary forces of José de San Martín were advancing on Lima. The Spanish viceroy could not hold the city. He could not destroy the treasure. He could not allow it to fall into rebel hands. So he decided to move it. The man tasked with this operation was a British merchant captain named William Thompson. His ship was called the Mary Dear. Thompson was not a naval officer. He was a trader, a pragmatist, a man who ran cargo for whoever paid. The Spanish viceroy offered him a contract that no merchant captain in his right mind could refuse. Transport the Lima treasury to Mexico. Hold it there until the political situation stabilized. Return it when called upon. The most conservative estimates place the cargo's value at around 12 million pounds sterling in 1820 values. In today's money, that is somewhere north of $1 billion at the floor. Some accounts suggest it was several times that. What the manifest records confirm is that the cargo included approximately 1,000 gold and silver coins, 200 gold bars, 200 chests of jewels, and a solid gold life-size statue of the Virgin Mary. They loaded it at night. The Spanish sent 2 officers aboard as armed escorts. Thompson and his crew were supposed to head directly north toward Mexico. They did not. Well, within days of leaving port, Thompson called his crew together. What happened in that meeting is not recorded. We only know the outcome. The 2 Spanish officers were thrown overboard. The Mary Dear changed course, and William Thompson sailed west into the Pacific. Cocos Island sits approximately 300 miles southwest of the Costa Rican coast. In 1820, it was uninhabited, known to Pacific navigators only as a waypoint for fresh water. It had no strategic value. No one was watching it. Thompson had been there before. He knew its geography. The island is about 24 square kilometers of volcanic rock carpeted in some of the densest jungle on the planet. The mountains rise to almost 600 meters. The coastline is a maze of cliffs, sea caves, tidal pools, and hidden coves. Waterfalls drop directly into the ocean. The rainfall is among the heaviest in the Americas. The interior is perpetually dark, perpetually wet, perpetually impenetrable. Thompson's crew spent days burying the treasure using the island's natural cave and tunnel systems. When they were done, Thompson drew a map. Then the Mary Dear sailed away. She did not get far. A Spanish warship intercepted her off the Central American coast. Most of the crew were hanged for piracy. Thompson and his first mate were spared on the condition that they lead the Spanish back to the buried treasure. He led them back to Cocos Island. Then, in what his captors described as an almost unbelievable act of audacity, Thompson and his mate slipped away into the jungle during the search and hid there for days until the Spanish ship was forced to leave without them. Thompson made his way to Canada. He spent the rest of his life trying to put together an expedition to recover the treasure. He never succeeded. He died in 1844. Before he died, he gave the maps to a man he trusted. That man's name was John Keating. John Keating was a Newfoundland merchant, born around 1798, known in his community as reliable and not given to fantasy. In 1844, according to the account he later gave to several witnesses whose depositions still exist, Keating sailed to Cocos Island using Thompson's maps. He went with a companion named Bogue. They found the entrance to one of the cave systems that Thompson had described. They went inside. What Keating said he found in that cave, and what Bogue confirmed in a separate account before his death, reads like the most extreme version of pirate fiction. But both men told the same story, independently, and years apart to different witnesses. Gold bars stacked against the walls, jeweled weapons, bags of coins that had rotted and spilled their contents across the floor in glittering drifts. And in the center of the cave, on a stone shelf, the solid gold statue of the Virgin Mary, exactly as described in the original Spanish manifest. They could not carry it all. They took what they could load into their boat, mostly loose coins and smaller pieces. Then their crew mutinied. Keating and Bogue escaped in the confusion, made it back to the Costa Rican coast, sold what they had taken, and lived well for a time. But the bulk of the treasure was still in the cave. Keating made a second voyage years later with better equipment and a smaller, trusted crew. He could not find the cave entrance again. The island's waterfalls and rain and volcanic geology had rearranged things in the years between visits. He searched for weeks and came home with nothing. Before he died, Keating passed the maps to someone he trusted. And that chain of custody runs, imperfectly but traceable, all the way into the 20th century. The recorded history of Cocos Island treasure hunting runs to over 300 separate expeditions across 2 centuries. Some were serious, well-funded operations. Others were little more than adventurers with second-hand maps and a borrowed boat. In 1897, a German businessman named August Gissler established a colony on Cocos Island, officially for settlement, unofficially to find the treasure. He lived there for 17 years. He mapped it exhaustively. He explored every accessible cave system, and he found artifacts consistent with early 19th century occupation. He did not find the treasure. He left broken by the island's isolation and his failure. In 1926, a Scottish engineer named Malcolm Campbell, who would later become famous for land speed records, organized an expedition with backing from British investors. He had obtained what he believed was an original Thompson map through reliable intermediaries. After 3 months, his crew had mapped several previously unknown cave systems, recovered old coins from a tidal pool consistent with the period, and found nothing else. Campbell left convinced the treasure was there. He spent years trying to raise money for a second attempt that never materialized. In 1948, a former German U-boat commander named Hans Hartmann arrived with experienced divers and documents he claimed had come through German naval intelligence. his divers worked the underwater approaches to the island's caves for weeks. Hartman himself drowned in the search, caught in a surge channel during bad weather. Between Hartman's death and the end of the 20th century, the expeditions continued with a regularity that bordered on compulsion. A British naval officer attempted a systematic survey of the island's western caves in 1955 and mapped 37 separate openings in the cliff face, none of which led to anything he could reach without specialized diving equipment he did not have. A French syndicate arrived in 1963 with 3 professional deep-sea divers, spent 6 weeks on the island, and departed convinced the treasure had shifted position due to seismic activity. A joint American-Costa Rican expedition in 1979 used early metal detection equipment across the island's interior and recorded 17 significant subsurface anomalies. Permission to excavate any of them was denied by the Costa Rican government, which had by that point grown deeply weary of treasure hunters and was moving toward formalizing the island's protected status. What is striking about this roster of failures is not the failure itself. It is the consistency of the testimony that accompanied each attempt. Almost every expedition that spent substantial time on the island came back with the same report, phrased differently each time but pointing in the same direction. The signs are there, and the topography matches the descriptions in the historical accounts. The cave systems are real and extensive. Something prevented us from going further. The failures kept accumulating, but so did the evidence that something was there. The underwater geography of Cocos Island is as complex as the terrestrial geography. The island's volcanic formation means that below the waterline there are extensive cave systems, some connected to above-ground tunnels, some entirely submerged, some partially flooding with the tides. This is the detail most accounts gloss over. When Thompson buried the Lima treasure in 1821, he used the island's natural cave systems. Some of those caves were accessible at low tide in 1821. 200 years of tidal activity and volcanic microseismic events have changed the water table. On passages that were dry in 1821 are now underwater at all tide levels. The treasure is not buried under the jungle. It is, in significant part, underwater. Professional diving teams in the 1980s and 1990s mapped a network of submerged passages on the island's eastern and southeastern coastlines that had never been surveyed. In one passage, a team recovered a corroded but identifiable iron chest handle consistent with early 19th century Spanish manufacture. In a second dive, they found a scatter of silver coins across a sandy floor inside a partially flooded tunnel, all dated prior to 1820. The Costa Rican government, which had by then declared Cocos Island a protected national park, halted further excavation. The Lima treasure is not the only hoard buried on Cocos Island. There are at least 3 other documented deposits beyond the Lima cache, each with its own chain of testimony. The first is associated with the pirate Benito Bonito, known as Bonito of the Bloody Sword, who operated in the Pacific between approximately 1815 and 1821. Testimonies from survivors of his attacks, recorded in Admiralty court proceedings in multiple countries, describe a man who accumulated enormous portable wealth with no fixed base. He was hanged in 1821. Before his execution, he reportedly told the British officer who arrested him that his treasure was on a Pacific island that could only be found with the right chart. Bonito's known hunting grounds are consistent with repeated visits to Cocos Island. The second deposit is associated with the wreck of a Spanish galleon called the Santa Cecilia, lost in the Cocos Island vicinity in the late 18th century. Spanish colonial records note the loss. Dive surveys have found structural evidence of a very old wreck in a sheltered bay on the island's western side. It has never been fully excavated. The third is the most unusual. A sworn statement deposited with a Peruvian notary in 1910 claims that certain items from the Mary Dear's cargo had been removed before she left Callao and subsequently transported to Cocos Island by a loyalist Spanish official's descendants, adding to whatever Thompson had already buried there. The document has been authenticated by 2 independent historians as consistent with the period. At least 47 separate documents have been presented at various times as the original Thompson map or a direct copy. A significant cottage industry existed throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, producing and selling fake treasure maps, and Cocos Island was among the most popular subjects. But several of these maps contain details that could not have been invented. A particular cave system on the southeastern coast, whose entrance is not visible from the water and was not documented in any published survey until the 1960s, appears on at least 3 maps whose provenance traces back to the mid-19th century. Someone who had actually been on the island drew those maps, or copied from someone who had. The most serious map analysis was conducted in the 1990s by a team from the University of Costa Rica working with archivists from Spain's Archivo General de Indias. Their conclusion, among the maps examined, at least 2 contained sufficient internally consistent and verifiable detail to be considered potentially authentic records of early 19th century activity on Cocos Island. Both indicated cache points in the eastern cave systems, areas that are now partially or fully submerged. Cocos Island became a Costa Rican national park in 1978. In 2002, the surrounding marine area was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Under Costa Rican law, any artifact recovered from the island or its surrounding waters is the property of the state. Unauthorized excavation is a criminal offense. The island has a permanent ranger station. Permits for research expeditions are granted selectively and prohibit anything resembling treasure hunting. Several organizations have petitioned the Costa Rican government for a licensed excavation under state supervision, with any recovered treasure remaining state property. These petitions have been consistently declined. The Costa Rican position is that the island's biological significance outweighs the historical, and any large-scale excavation would cause unacceptable environmental damage. In 2019, Spanish historians working through previously uncatalogued documents from the 1820s found reports from the naval officers who intercepted the Mary Deer. Misfiled and overlooked for nearly 200 years, these documents contain an inventory that includes items not appearing in any previously known account. Gold objects whose descriptions match sacred Inca artifacts, objects with cultural significance far beyond their monetary value. And these documents have been shared with Costa Rican authorities. Conversations are ongoing. No permit has been issued. Robert Louis Stevenson began writing Treasure Island in 1881. The standard account says he invented the story wholesale. What it leaves out is that Stevenson was deeply interested in Pacific navigation, well read in the literature of Pacific voyaging, and fully aware of the legends surrounding Cocos Island. The specific elements of his novel, the buried pirate gold, the tropical island, the hidden cave, the map with markings, correspond to the Cocos Island legend, with enough precision that Stevenson scholars have long acknowledged the connection. Stevenson's father was a lighthouse engineer who moved in social circles where the stories of Pacific navigation and lost treasure circulated freely. Stevenson grew up hearing accounts of the sea. His later life took him to the Pacific permanently. He settled in Samoa and died there in 1894, 11 years after the novel was published. He was, in other words, not a man who invented a Pacific Island adventure from pure imagination. He was a man who was surrounded by Pacific Island adventure for most of his life and drew on what he knew. The character of Long John Silver, the novel's magnificent, morally ambiguous villain, bears a resemblance to the type of man William Thompson was. Not a cartoonish pirate, but a pragmatic man of commerce who saw an opportunity and took it, whose justifications for his actions were coherent, even if his actions were monstrous. Stevenson understood that the most interesting criminals are not the ones who twirl their mustaches. They are the ones who make you understand, against your better judgment, exactly why they did what they did. More importantly, the novel's central dramatic question mirrors the actual history with uncomfortable accuracy. In the novel, the treasure hunt goes wrong. The gold is recovered at terrible cost. The characters who survive are changed in ways they did not expect. The island gives up what it holds only partially and reluctantly. Stevenson was writing entertainment. He was also, perhaps without fully realizing it, writing prophecy. In 2012, a company called Argo Navis, funded by European investors, conducted non-invasive survey work on Cocos Island using ground-penetrating sonar and remotely operated underwater vehicles. Their 2015 report, submitted to the Costa Rican Ministry of Environment, documents anomalies in the subsurface geology of the island's eastern coast, consistent with large metallic objects in partially submerged chambers at depths between 8 and 40 meters. The pattern of anomalies corresponds closely to the cache points identified in the two maps considered potentially authentic. The company requested an excavation permit. It was denied. The Argo Navis report is publicly available. It runs to 63 pages of technical analysis, GPS coordinates, sonar imagery, and carefully worded conclusions. Reading it is a particular kind of experience. The authors are scientists. They do not use the word treasure once in the entire document. They write about metallic anomaly clusters and void spaces consistent with artificial modification. They write about correlation coefficients between mapped subsurface features and historical cartographic records. They write in the language of peer review and institutional credibility. But what they are describing in that careful antiseptic language is the same thing everyone who has ever been to Cocos Island has described in plainer terms. It is down there. We can see it on the instruments. We cannot get to it. The sharks that circle Cocos Island in their thousands, the hammerheads and whale sharks and silky sharks that make the island one of the premier dive destinations on Earth, are in an accidental sense the treasure's final guardians. The marine protected area that keeps the ecosystem intact is the same legal framework that prevents excavation. The two things are inseparable. The island is protected because of its living inhabitants. The treasure sits beneath them, in the dark, waiting. The last person known to have conducted a sustained search was a German treasure hunter named Matthias Freiherr von Ritter, who made 12 voyages to the island between 1969 and 1984. He never found the treasure, but in a crack in the volcanic rock on the island's northeastern shore, he found a small bronze medallion of Spanish manufacture bearing the date 1819 and the image of a ship. Analyzed and confirmed as consistent with the type carried by Spanish naval officers of the period. It proved nothing. It suggested everything. Von Ritter died in 1991. His records sit in a German maritime museum, consulted by researchers, resolving nothing. 300 feet below the surface of the Pacific, in a cave that floods and drains with the tides, something is waiting. It has been waiting for over 200 years. The gold does not corrode. The silver oxidizes but survives. The jewels scattered across that stone floor in the dark are exactly where Keating described them when he walked through in 1844. The solid gold statue of the Virgin Mary, if she is still where Thompson placed her, has sat in the same spot through every earthquake and every storm and every failed expedition for 2 centuries. The law says she stays there. The jungle says she stays there. The ocean says she stays there, and the island keeps its secrets the way it always has. Completely, perfectly, with a patience that makes every human effort look like exactly what it is. A very brief attempt by very short-lived creatures to take back what one of their own buried there a very long time ago. The treasure is real. The island is real. And somewhere beneath the water and the rock and the silence, the gold is still there. What do you think? Should Costa Rica open the island to a supervised excavation, even if it risks disturbing one of the most pristine marine environments on the planet? Or does the treasure belong to the ocean now? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. If this kind of deep historical investigation is what you are here for, subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss what is coming next. Until then, stay curious, stay informed. See you in the next one.